Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm very excited and honored to have the divine Ashana here today. Welcome, Ashana, for the first time on the podcast.
Hi, Shireen. Thank you so much for having me. Very blessed to be here.
I'm so grateful to have you here. You have made such a big impact in my life. You're almost on a daily basis in my home or in my ear, and that's been for over, I would probably say, I think it like 8, 9 years maybe. It's been a long time, and you've been like shifting my consciousness, and it's really um, just amazing to have you here for other people to also. I think most people will have heard your beautiful sounds, and I will just share a little bit. That Ashana is one of the premier healing music artists of all time, weaving together angelic vocals, celestial sounds of crystal singing bowls. And it's a really entirely new and beautiful genre of healing music with crystal singing bowls. And for those of you who follow me on Instagram, you often hear Ashana on my stories and in my posts, because I always feel like what I the sound that you share with the world with these beautiful bowls are exactly what correlates with what I'm trying to convey. So I am so grateful to have you here. Welcome. Maybe you can start by introducing yourself as well, and who you are, and what what you're doing and what you're sharing, because I think it's potent to hear it from you as well.
Oh my goodness, that's such a big question. And I always like to just kind of consolidate it down into a couple of sentences because when we're following our soul path, okay, it doesn't always look like that. Um, you know, I
Mm.
started loving music and wanting to sing from the time I was very young and had love for music all of my childhood. Ended up going to Conservatory of Music in New York City and graduating from that, and then moving into multiple different genres of music as I was looking for myself and around this, kind of finding where am I and what is it that I want to sing and um, what does that feel like? Started writing songs. It also started following at that point in time, what I realized was the awakening of my spiritual path. So I began to study yoga um, when I was, gosh, in my 20s. So moving on from that, it was just this beautiful exploration and sometimes very challenging exploration of different styles of music and really finding asking the questions, who am I? What is it that I want to do? And how do I navigate the world of my emotions? So that was a very challenging. I don't say this usually because I usually don't say this, but I'm a Capricorn, and that Capricorn, perseverance and one foot in for the other, and you just keep on doing it. And the early part of my life, in some ways, was very, very challenging emotionally, spiritually, mentally. And this beautiful Capricorn energy, the older you get, the juicier everything gets. And I have found that to be really, really true. So about 20, 25 years ago, I met my first crystal singing bowl. I was living in Santa Fe, New Mexico at the time. And a friend of mine called me. She said, "Have you ever heard of these?" I said, "No." She said, "These are right up your alley." And so I ordered one sight unseen. I received it in my home about 3 weeks later. and opened up this humongous box. It was one of the big 14-inch white classic frosted bowls, which are not the ones you're seeing behind me. And I tapped the side of the bowl. I put it on the table, tapped the side of the bowl, and immediately burst into tears from the sound. And the very first thought that I had was that light had come to live in my house. Those are the exact words. That's the exact thought I thought. And then instantly I thought, one day I'm going to put these into music. And it took a while, like literally, like less than a month. I had 7 bowls, and I started to sing with them. I started to take them out into the community and play them. There was nothing, there were no sound baths at that time. Sound healing was not trending. Nobody knew what sound healing was. Nobody knew what a crystal singing bowl was. People would joke with me all the time, and they would say, "Oh, wow, you brought us a bunch of salad bowls." I mean, this is the kind of thing people said out of ignorance, and of course they were being playful. But there just was nothing. There were no courses. You couldn't study. You couldn't teach. There was nothing there. So I was listening intuitively. I was with the guidance of my spiritual mentors and teachers, and I was learning and exploring at the same time. And as I said, well, I'm not sure I said this, but after about a couple of years of doing this, it was about 2005, so it was more than a couple of years. After about 5, 6 years of playing and exploring, I realized that it was time for me to make my first album. I knew that, and I didn't know that it was really going to be with the bowls. I thought it would. That was my commitment. But I was also open to everything. And the interesting thing is, because your audience knows, I think, familiar with David Premal and Sanatam Kaur. So I was in my yoga class, and I was lying in Shavasana, and the teacher played, I think, one of Sanatam Kaur's pieces of music, Ades to Se Ades, from Prem. And I'm lying there and I'm listening and I'm going, that's the guy. It wasn't even like, I didn't know who Sanatam was at that time. And the music, it wasn't like her voice or the chant or anything. It was like, I was like, whoever produced this album, that's the guy. That's my person. And literally, I called my yoga teacher right after class, and I said, what was that music she was playing? So she tells me, and I said, who's the producer? And so she looks and she goes, oh, it's Thomas Barkey. And I'm like, okay, great. So immediately I look him up on the internet, and literally it turns out like 2 weeks later, he's going to be in Santa Fe. And so 2 weeks later, and that was the last time he was ever in Santa Fe. So literally, it was a big, big concert with Sonato, and I went, and it was hilarious because I was wearing a black dress with pineapples, gold pineapples all over it, or gold flecks all over it, when I was with my friend who was wearing a shirt with pineapples all over it. And we were in Kundalini Yoga land, and everybody was wearing and I couldn't have stood out more if I had tried. So it was really, really funny and very fun. And we went up to meet him afterwards. And, literally 3 months later, we were in the studio and recording All Is Forgiven. And I've never looked back. And we're getting ready to release our 9th album now. And now I teach. I have a beautiful program called Crystal Ball Mastery. We do another program called Celestial Alignment for Healing, which is, for anyone who is struggling with health challenges on mental, emotional, physical, spiritual level. We have incredible results with it. I travel, I tour, I sing, and that, I think that kind of covers it. It's my joy, my passion.
Wow. What a journey, and how it feels like it's like a divine union and some type. I'm just thinking about yoga and the power of mantras. We're talking about different
Mhm.
types of yoga here as well, and for me, like the mantras and the creation, that it's all sound.
Yes.
I just feel like, why is, and there must be so much research on like how these instruments affect us, because we know that when we listen to something, it can affect us emotionally. We know when we're happy, we can play something when we're sad. And then how these crystals, bowls, and also other instruments can also create healing. And I think that's the importance of what you also said, that I can't imagine being without these this type of sound healing. And I'm wondering a little bit about the crystal bowl and its history, like how, where are they from, and where did they start being used, because they're so beautiful. And I know that there are traditions, and I have a bowl from, can it be some South Asian bowl? Yeah, I want to hear. I'm curious about the history of them.
Well, they have a really interesting history because crystal bowls actually came out of NASA and our national laboratories, and they were crystal crucibles used for force growing crystals for the semiconductor industry. So somebody back in the 1960s or 1970s, this is kind of like the mythology of the crystal bowl world, but I doubt that it's very far off. Um, Someone found one of these cast-offs and saw the shape. There were, the white, what we call the classic frosted bowls now, and tapped the side, made a sound, and went like this around the rim and said, "Oh my goodness, this is amazing." And so as a result of that, um, they started collecting these cast-offs from the semiconductor industry. And I know this to be true because, back in my other lifetime, before I was doing what I do for the last 25 years, I used to teach early childhood music. And I worked in Los Alamos, New Mexico. And I had parents who were scientists in the national laboratories who used these bowls, right? So they were very, very familiar with them. And when I would bring them into class to play for the kids, they would go, "Oh, I know those. We have those at the office." So it was a real surprise. And then ultimately what happened is that um, in the laboratories, they're using different materials now, but they took off as part of healing modalities. Vibrational healing modalities were now beginning to come into conscious awareness in the 1980s, 1990s, and increasingly so. And so companies evolved that were specialists in just making these bowls. And the company that I've been working with for decades, Crystal Tones, they certainly began doing that. And then they developed what is now known as the alchemy bowls, which are what you see behind me. These are bowls that have been overlaid with precious gemstones or infused with precious gemstones, minerals, and metals as well. So, there are bowls that I have here that are made with rose quartz, diamond, malachite, gold, silver, platinum, and each one of them carries its own unique frequency signature. So the energy of pure quartz crystal, its natural properties is to amplify energy, to transmit energy, to store and contain energy, and to transduce or transform energy. So when you apply intention with the bowls when you're playing, and you can use an alchemy bowl, for, let's just say, rose quartz, for example. So your intention plus the frequency of the bowl equals a new state of vibrational frequency. And when we have a bowl or we have music, whether it's drumming or mantra, right, which I love, I'm very passionate about, then what we do when that sound becomes dominant, when it's played in our environment or we're participating in it either by chanting or by playing a bowl or an instrument or by singing with a bowl or an instrument, that sound becomes dominant. And literally all our cells, all the fluids in our body, everything begins to entrain to that frequency and to that sound. So this is one of the reasons why when you go to a kirtan and you chant for an hour and a half, first of all, you're oxygenating your blood by breathing, and you're vibrating your entire body by chanting, and you're with a whole bunch of other people that are doing the same thing, or you're in a sound bath, or you're listening to music like mine, and you're infusing yourself energetically. It's on the physical, it's on the mental, it's on the emotional, and the spiritual bodies. The entire energy, all your energy bodies receive those frequencies and are entrained to them.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's sometimes hard for people to understand the impact that it does, what we take into our senses, because even in Chinese medicine, if you have a certain taste, it can create a vibration within an organ, like a bitter taste, for example. And I mean, the sound is such an important sense. And I felt also as being very sensitive to sound. I feel like I have too good of a hearing almost because I hear everything when I'm sleeping. I'm like picking up everything. I feel like these sounds are really can balance me to be able to yeah, I think it's like that sensitivity. I need to nourish my hearing with something that is not like sounds that are disruptive. And like we talked about, being in a quiet place or hearing nature or hearing these singing bowls, it resonates with our brain, our thoughts, how our cells react. And also, for example, yesterday I was in a sound healing and I felt like one of the instruments really worked on the crown so much. So I can imagine like the alchemy of these bowls, how you can start fine-tuning them into the energetic body and our energy centers.
Absolutely, absolutely, because the notes of the bowls themselves, as do our voices, as do all instruments, contain what we know in music and physics are called harmonics. And these are the notes within the notes within the notes. So if you really take any particular note, and this is scientifically proven, all notes, every note contains all notes. Okay. So there's just this spectrum of frequency that we're not even hearing as humans. So we can apply and play with, and for lack of a better word, recommend specific sounds for people going through different experiences, different life experiences, to help support that. And that's been going on for thousands of years. This is not a new thing. Sound healing is not new. Sound healing is as old as the first human that walked this planet. So yeah.
It's very true, because I also, this particular weekend, spent time with a indigenous Sami woman. It's the indigenous people of Sweden who have resided in the northern parts for uh, before the Swedish ethnic group, and we spoke about the drums that they have, that they create themselves and have. And I said, well, we also have that tradition, my Kurdish heritage. We also have the drums and the women's, and like you said, like the sound of drums and other instruments. It's must be so ancient. And then if we think about mantras as a manifestation of the divine, of the different gods and goddesses, then sound is so important to tune into that. And I wanted to ask you, like, what has that invoked for you on your spiritual path, as a ceremonial practice, as a ritual? I can just imagine, because I'm, as I said, I listen to you daily for a long time, so I feel like it just, like the angelic realm is so, and especially the album that I feel so connected to is it's uh, the one which you have Sanctus and Soul Merge and all of these. It's called this. Is it Silence of
It's called
uh,
Julian Silence. Yeah.
Jews of Silence? Those I feel like have resonated a lot, and I think that that might also say what we like to tap into. I don't know if you've had that intention to connect. How is that process for you? Because I'm just amazed how you can create such a beautiful alchemy between voice and the bowls. It's amazing.
It's listening. It's really about listening.
Mm.
You asked a few things here about, the inspiration of mantra and other, I'm going to expand it to other spiritual traditions. Um, yes, I've been very influenced by that. And, and the interesting thing is, uh, my voice teacher back from about 2006 to about 2014. She passed in 2014, but she was as well as being an incredible voice teacher, she was an incredible and gifted healer, and worked with one of the direct students of Paramahansa Yogananda for her whole life, who was her primary teacher. And she was also a very gifted psychic. And I was singing one day, and she looked at me and she goes, "My goodness." She said, "All of the traditions are all in your field." Right? And so and she started naming them, it was Christian and Buddhist and Hindu and Taoist and Muslim and this and this and this. And she's like, wow. And it was such an affirmation for me, and Judaism, because I've always felt as a soul an embodiment, and much, much more so in these past probably 10 years, that I have had significant lifetimes in multiple traditions, and I'm familiar sonically with them. They resonate deeply. I can tell you lots and lots and lots of stories about me hearing, this chant, this Jewish chant, this, Gurumukhi chant, this chant in, Hindu, this one, many in Sanskrit, this Hildegard von Bingen, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's just like they all kind of sit in my awareness at a really deep level. And so when it came time for me to, when the bowls started coming in, there were a couple of things that began happening for me. One, it was just the connection, it was like stepping beyond the traditions and moving into a vibrational frequency which was really pure angelic. That is hands down what happens. It's like it's angelic, and it's also, more recently, it's this combination of angelic and being able to tune into galactic energies as well. And so, like in the new album that's coming out is called "We Are Here to Love," and we'll be releasing that very shortly. There's a lot of galactic, energetic and angelic energetic in the pieces that are there, that come through. Cosmic Grace is a beautiful example of, Benji Wertheimer and me coming together and playing and just bringing through, like the angelic and the galactic. And it's people now, it's so funny because to me it's funny. They're calling it light language, and it's like, and I just saw recently somebody's like teaching a course on how to sing light language, and I had to laugh. It was like, wow, I've been doing this since I was a kid. It's just the attunement. It seems so simple, really, as this attunement. You have to get past your thinking mind, right? And you become absorbed in the sound. And, beautiful examples of this, I think, are, and I'm not comparing myself in this way, but, when we think of the rishis in Sanskrit that went into such deep, deep, deep states of meditation and then brought through the Vedas. They brought through, sounds of mantra that came in, and they're just infused with the energy of those realms. We're multidimensional beings. We connect with, on many, 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 many levels, not just the conscious level that we're in, living, in kind of 3D/4D humanity on Earth. So, my gosh, I think I went off on a tangent. So I apologize for that.
I love listening to you.
So anyway, you asked where the music comes from. That's where it comes from, really. There's this influence that is, it's both soul level, and it was me, paying attention to my guidance, which led me to actually have concrete experience of, singing Jewish chants, and concrete experience of singing and chanting Gurumukhi, concrete experience, studying, learning, to this day, working with Sanskrit mantra and studies, to all of these, they just came in. And so, my guidance, like, for example, when back in 2009, when I was, getting ready to do, a new album, and my team they were super clear. They said, you're going to sing the Aramaic, the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic. And I was like, I am. And they were like, yes, now get to work, and it was like, studying it. But I love languages so much that, listening to them and learning them is a deep, great joy to me. At the same time, when I went through that process, it completely awakened something inside of me. It was like, the whole recording of that Lord's Prayer in Aramaic was so beautiful, because I was lying. I'm not lying. It felt like I was lying, but I was in the studio, and I was in the vocal booth, and I could feel, it was like I was having flashbacks of, of a memory, a soul memory, right? and as souls, we are just so expansive, right? A soul memory of being with, Yeshua, Jesus, the Christ, and that, and feeling that, and what I felt in this space makes me cry because it was so beautiful. It was like this infusion, perhaps it was the angelic, divine soul energies, higher self coming in, and it was like it rested in my heart while I was singing, and it was like this was going out in like Christ-like energy through the singing. It was going like whoa, 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 to just touch people with this frequency. And in the meantime, there's a part of me that was watching all of this happening while I'm singing. And so I'm experiencing it, I'm watching it, and I'm part of it at the same time. It was just so beautiful. And that happens, that is for me, that's the gift of being willing to bring these energies through. It's a healing for me personally, always. And when I say a healing, I mean a bringing back to wholeness and awakening. And then I have the great privilege to be a vessel for that so others can have their own experience.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I can, even if I haven't heard you explain it, I can feel that. And it feels like you are channeling, like what you said, it's like beyond time and space.
Oh, yes.
I, I feel like it's so hard for people to start with a meditation or a daily sadhana practice. But if you can just turn on something from Ashana and listen to it for 10 minutes, and it will, like, listen consciously, and or just have it. I sometimes have had it in the background while I'm working or when I'm going somewhere, and it direct, maybe my body has attuned to your the music that you have created, because it's instant now. It's like a switch and my body remembers, and then you're creating this beyond time and space, a remembrance, like you said, beyond traditions. It's like a unity, and then also feels like other dimensions and also other planetary frequencies. It's like so
Exactly.
much. And this is an incredible science, and something that probably most of us need right now, because we are bringing in so much into our senses that are not serving us or are not healing. It's probably more destructive than building us up. But I'm wondering, for those, I think most people here have heard in their own playlists or in a yoga class or in some type of healing sounds. But do you think is, like, this is very important for in this time? What is the gift and the initiation of the singing bowls and the yeah, everything that you have created? Who do you think could benefit from it? I would say everyone, but it's like it would to start off.
Well, I'm so glad you said everything you just said, because and especially referencing the challenges that people are going through right now. That is why a few years ago, my team in the angelic realms and in my soul guidance team, they were very specific and said, you need to create this program, and it's called Celestial Alignment for Healing. And I'm like, okay. And it happened over a period of, the download for it happened very, very quickly, and then actually doing it turned into its own timing and its own layout. But what it is now, and we have a free gift for everybody, which is part of this program, because you said, who is this for, and who can really benefit from this, and you talked about, which was so gorgeous. You talked about, wow, it's so hard for people to have a sadhana and to go straight into meditation. So how do they do that? Well, that's what this program was all about. And then you talked about bringing the music into, your daily practice, and then eventually you entrained it. Well, that's what this program is all about. It is like we take people for 8 weeks. We take people from meditation with sound, and we do this all with sound and with live teaching. It's like we take them into meditation, we take them into mindset, we take them into working with listening and absorption and energy. It's on just on multiple levels. We work with people, and these are people, like all of us, right? They really want a deeper connection with their souls. They may be struggling with some very serious health challenges that could be from debilitating illnesses to emotional illnesses, people struggling with depression or anxiety or grief. We are working with people that are simply wanting to feel more creativity in their lives and open up the space so they feel more connected to their higher self, their divine intelligence. And the results that we're having are just like amazing, because we're actually giving you the container and giving you this structure. They work with their voices, they're constantly working with a structure of how do you do this. And you don't have to play a bowl, because I did all of that for you. So, and if you do play a bowl or you do play an instrument, that's double grace, So how wonderful is that? But I wanted to make it so that what happens if people can't go to a live person? And what happens in between the time when you go to the sound bath, the next one isn't for 2 weeks. What happens in that time? How do we stay entrained to those higher vibrational frequencies 24/7? And you can do that. And that's what this program is designed to do. It's just exactly what you said. It was like, wow, I just put the music on and boom, it's like a switch flip. A switch flips. It's like flipping a switch, and I'm right there. And that's what we need right now, because here, we're struggling with so much toxic sound in the world on some level. We're struggling with the intensity of information overload. We're struggling with, you know, 9 billion people, 8 billion people on the planet, and the collective vibration of fear and anxiety, which just seems to be getting stronger and stronger and stronger right now as we move through this dynamic transformation into, kind of the new earth, the new consciousness. One yuga is ended and now the new one started, but we're in this place now. I mean, I'm digressing, but it's a challenging time to be a soul on earth. And we all came in to say, wow, I'd like to have this experience, probably not realizing, oh my God, what have I done? you know? So sound and vibration is literally helping us and can help us um, maintain our stability in times of great transformation and challenge. And this particular program, Celestial Alignment for Healing, that was designed for this time. Absolutely designed for this time. For anybody, if you have trouble maintaining a practice, or you really want to maintain those high vibrational frequencies all day long, if you're working with a health challenge, and literally, I mean, I'm not exaggerating. We've had people end their cancer treatment protocols early once they start on the program. We have people get up out of wheelchairs in this program. We've had people, go back to the hospital and their doctors and say, I need you to wean me off my medication because I don't need it at this intensity anymore or at all. We've had people with anxiety and depression say, I'm done. I wake up every morning and I feel like life is worth living. So I know that sound works. I know that sound works, and I know that sound is here, and sound and healing music, because I really want to put those two pieces together. That is my dial up. It is as artist, musician, educator, teacher, author, healer, all those pieces together. That's what my work is. And it's here for us right now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And it's so, you said so many things that are so true. And I think, and besides the things that you spoke about, also people who are burnt out, and that frequency can really help uplift. And I know how it can be soothing, so you stress down, but it can also create energy, which, and I'm thinking just about one thing, what I use also your music for, and to create myself with my different instruments, is to change the frequency in a room or in a house. And imagine everyone, like your work has probably come at this time, because if we are so many people every day tuning into that, it changes structures within ourselves, but it also changes the structure of that, the grid that we're talking about sometimes, like over the world. I'm here in Sweden, and people are like, I feel like it's creating some type of portal to bring in more healing. So even if it's only me listening, it can create a different structure around me and the land, and it connects down to the earth and aligns up. So it's like bringing everything together, right?
Absolutely. You really nailed it. Absolutely. It's beautiful. That's exactly, that's exactly what is meant when we say intention plus frequency equals healing. That is exactly right. And sound becomes part of that equation, because we bring in sound and vibration, specific kinds of sounds and vibrations to reinstate harmonious balance, either in physical form or, in an environment. We do that. So they're finding all kinds of things about, using frequency to clean up the water somewhere. Masaru Emoto taught us this about how our intention and the vibration, literally the vibration of our thoughts, could change the quality of the water. But they're also doing that actually to literally to clean up rivers. So when you as an individual make the decision to begin to do that for yourself in your home, and you'll see it start to ripple out. One of my students, she has a son who was struggling very, very deeply with neurological pieces that were leading to constant states of depression. And she brought her bowls and never spoke to her son about what she was doing, and used prayer and sound on a daily basis. And eventually, the whole family began to shift. And she never talked to them about what she was doing. She just did it in the quiet of her own space. And my husband and I, we live outside of Sedona, Arizona, and we put in our garden, in our yard, in the rooms, everywhere in our house is like a vibrational energy that we're consciously working on. And we're just getting ready to install yet a new pyramid in our backyard. And I wanted to do this because I wanted to increase the vibrational frequency to go out into the neighborhood. And we watch this, we've been in a couple places now. We used to live in a big city and in a neighborhood, and we watched shortly after we moved in, like multiple of the houses changed ownership, and the people that moved in were like amazing. And we watched the same thing happen when we moved into this neighborhood, where now it's like it's like the old energy just began lifting off. And one of my best friends, the musician Aeolia, whose music you may know of, where we live around the corner from each other, and he hosts a meditation gathering every week. And it's when two or more are gathered, this is when we can do really profound change. And they sit in this gathering and meditate together, and literally, and they're meditating for a shift in the collective, uh, from a war mentality to a peace mentality. It's very conscious, focused meditation done every week. Been happening every week for 3 years on Fridays. Okay. And it's not unusual for them to finish the meditation and there be a rainbow outside. Okay. So we have so much possibility to make a difference when we take our intention and we let it ride on waves of healing sound. We can create amazing changes, both personally and collectively. And that is what my commitment is as an artist, as a musician, as a teacher, um, as a visionary. That is why I'm here. And we all can participate in that in whatever way we are divinely called.
Yes. And thank you for sharing that. And it's so important to take that perspective that what we're doing on our own and the intentions that we have for ourselves also is for always for the collective. We're not separated. And
Absolutely.
everything, like you said, also, you have an intention with what you create. And then I feel that intention, of course, when listening. And then when I also tune in, I have an intention with it. Then it starts manifesting. And I think that, for example, Sanctus was always how when I've done Reiki healing, I always put that on. I can't do it. I feel like that helps me to tune in to that healing.
Yeah.
So I always
surprised me. Yeah.
Yeah, and then so we're always like coming back to how are we. It's just amazing to create something. So you're an inspiration of that you it's part of your own journey, but you are also creating this effect for everyone else, and you're doing it just so naturally, like you said, you have been a vessel, and that's such a gift to the world. And I really appreciate all of your work and everything that you've done, and also this beautiful golden light of healing guided meditation that everyone can take part of. I'm linking it in the show notes, which helps you to move from stress to serenity, move from pain into relaxation, and also the receptivity and the spiritual awakening. And I think many of us are looking for that, and we have some who are listening are in the beginning of that path, or some are come and we find new things to enable our, as I said, our own path, but it's also the collective path, because we're all doing it for, maybe it starts with, okay, I want to heal myself, but it's so powerful when you bring in the higher or the bigger picture, and like what you're doing in your neighborhood. But I mean, from you has probably many shifted, so many that you wouldn't know about even probably. But it's so amazing. And what about people who do want to start using it for themselves as a, so besides listening to your beautiful music, and I have many of your tracks on my Spotify Law of Positivism playlist. And if anyone wants to know my favorite album, I can send the link as well. But I'm thinking about those who feel called. Like, when do you know that you are called to start working with a singing bowl, and how can people start with that?
Well, what I would do is invite everybody to go to my website. It's soundofashana.com. And
Mm.
you'll see so many things there. There is information about the bowls. There's media. There's a book, a beautiful book that I've written called Crystal Singing Bowls: The Angelic Sound of Healing, Relaxation, and Spiritual Awakening. It's an award-winning book, multiple award-winning book. And if you've been called to sound and vibrational healing, a great place to start is by reading that book. That's you can order it from Amazon. You can get the Kindle version from my website, there's a beautiful audio version that Thomas Barkey and I did for everybody. And that's a fantastic way. There's Crystal Ball Mastery, which is my mentoring program. We have a fabulous retreat that we do once a year called Crystal Ball Mastery Foundations, and that is in Sedona, Arizona. Anybody listening is very welcome. It's going to be August 5th through 10th this year. So we're getting ready in a couple months that we'll be welcoming everybody there. So if that's of interest to you, you can do that. If you want to reach out to me, you live in Europe and you don't want to travel, we work Crystal Ball Mastery online with everyone. And then, of course, if you're just waking up, Golden Light of Healing is part of Celestial Alignment for Healing, that program I was sharing with you about. So that is a little tiny taste of what is in that entire program. And if you're really ready, that is an amazing program. It's all online. As I said, it's 8 weeks with me, live classes, 8 weeks, new meditations every single week, new music, new teachings. It's a marvelous program to help you get started and to initiate shifts and changes both in consciousness and in healing on multiple levels. So, and I teach that class with my husband, James Koinui, who's a native Hawaiian healer. Family goes back over 20 generations on the big island of Hawaii, and he is considered the real deal. He's the real deal, the kahuna. So in his
Wow.
lineage. So he and I teach that together, as he's always with me in all of my live events. So come and be with us. We love having you, and we love helping.
It's beautiful. I will link to everything in the show notes. And exactly, you can always find Ashana also on Instagram. And is there anything else you would like to share before we close?
No, just trust and listen to your knowingness.
Mm.
You are sovereign beings. Okay. And the more you listen to that guidance, the more you will be led exactly where you need to be. Trust that. And as you do, your light will expand and you will touch people, places that you can't even imagine now. And it will grow into this place where you know without a doubt that you are connected to all of life in the cosmos, in the universe, and on earth. And it starts with listening.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing, doing everything that you do. And I'm so grateful to have had this time with you. And I hope we will have more. And thank you for everyone who listened today. I would really recommend everything that Ashana creates, the courses, the music. Just tune in and you will know what we're speaking about. And if you haven't, if you have listened to this on the podcast app, if you watch this on YouTube, you can see the beautiful crystal bowls behind Ashana as well. And they're so, yes, so colorful and beautiful on their own, just like that. So thank you. Thank you so much again. And can't wait to hear the new album as
Good.
well.
Yes. Me
Very
too. It's gorgeous. Stunning, actually. Yeah.
Oh, can't wait. Thank you.
All right, my dear. Take good care. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Many
Thank
blessings.
you. Blessings.